Hey folks, it's Takota Cohen here from buildingyourhomestead.com. I apologize about that glitch in the startup there. I had my YouTube in the background, so that's why it was all jittery there. Anyways, thanks so much, Ed Businesses. So we're going to be talking about strategies for how to start your own homestead business. Should you quit cold turkey? Should it be a 1 to 5 year plan? We're going to be talking about some of the best, worst, easiest, hardest, and most unique homestead businesses. We're going to be talking about whether or not it's essential to have a social media presence if you want to have a profitable homestead business in today's day and age. We're also going to be talking about some of the successes and struggles around homestead or farm succession, and many other just topics I'm super excited about. I'm super passionate about. I think profitability, especially in the homesteading space, is just so important right now. So our guest tonight is going to be Cheyenne Martin. She was born and raised on a homestead in Colorado before it was even cool. She married a city boy with a country heart, and for 6 years, they did what they could to homestead in an urban setting. Eventually, they moved to a 5-acre homestead where they learned how to get the land to pay for itself. And in May of 2023, they moved back to the homestead that Cheyenne grew up on, where they were making a full-time living off their land. And through her consulting, coaching, and free resources, she also works to help others to become profitable pioneers as well. All the links are in the show notes below. Okay. Cheyenne, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so to start off with, can you share a bit about your homesteading history, why you decided to stay in it? There's a lot of people who were born and raised on small farms or homesteads that just couldn't wait to get the heck out of there. So yeah, talk about your history, what it was like growing up, and also just a lot of my clients and who are first generation homesteaders see that their lack of experience is a massive barrier to their success. However, I like to reframe it as one of their biggest strengths because they don't have any bad habits. And so just as you're kind of sharing your story, can you talk a bit about you kind of from your perspective, what were some of the pros and cons of being born and raised on a homestead?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, just like Takota said, I was born and raised on a homestead, and I think the reason why I stayed was because my dad was a rancher, and then he moved, and we still kept some of the lifestyle, but I got to go back for the fun stuff, right? I got to go back for branding, I got to go back for calving, I got to go back for moving cows, but I wasn't in it day to day. And I think that I don't know, my personally now, I'm in it day to day and I love it so much, but it does make me wonder that if having just like the fun parts of ranching was definitely what made it fun for me, because I could go home, you know? But when I married my husband, who was a city boy, and we were in San Diego, I bought a horse and we were living in an apartment. And I didn't have a plan for the horse, even though I had bought it. So, you can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. And I think that probably is so dependent on everyone's personality. But for me, we homesteaded for fun. It was super important for my parents to teach us, where our food comes from, and self-sustainability and gardening. And so while we were sustained from the land, I do think just, in the 90s, it was more of, this is kind of a fun lifestyle and not kind of what we're dealing with now. The whole culture is different, right? But I will say that my husband is a city boy, which you would never know if you met him today. You would think that he's been doing this his whole life. I think that he has a huge advantage over me, and he's a lot more efficient. And I think maybe because, and I do want to encourage those of you that are brand new to this, that you don't have all of these like things that you've been taught your entire life of like, this is the only way that you can do this. No offense, Dad, if you're watching, but I do have some of those things, right, that are, this is the way. And my husband has never done this before, so he just gets crap done because he has it in front of him and he just goes to do it. And so I think those of you that are brand new to this, listen to your intuition, because it will really help you, and don't listen too much to the people that have been doing it their whole lives, because they're going to be opinionated.
That's funny. Yeah, that's been 100% my experience as well, that there's just so many bad habits that you get growing up on a farm, and limiting beliefs, which I think that my next question is, why do you think words like profit, business, and wealth are so taboo for so many people in the homesteading and farming space today?
Oh gosh, I could talk hours about this.
Yeah.
I first started because people had noticed that our business was doing so well. And so I started teaching people at our local library. That's how Profitable Pioneers was born. And it's interesting to me because when I first started, I was afraid of the vegans, right? I thought that the vegans would be the one that would just be super hard on me. And actually, it's the older generation of farmers that have been the meanest and hardest for me. And I think the reason why is because we've just been so trained that you better love it because there's no money in it. And that's just been, those types of phrases have been said over and over, of just like, you better love it because there's no money in it. And there's a lot of truth to that because of the way that people do it. And just like I was saying before, we pick up old habits that are not great. And so we're kind of creating that own problem for us because we won't try new things and we won't become creative. And so if you look at business in general without ag in it at all, then you can see that you can make money with anything. And we haven't been taught that. And so I think that's why it's just so taboo. I also think there's some culture behind it as well with homesteading. That's like, we're doing this to save money. We're doing this to be frugal. And I think that can kind of create this subconscious of we're supposed to be poor. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah. So how did you break out of that mold? Like, did you always have that growing up, or was there like an epiphany moment where you're like, you know what, that's it. Like, I'm actually going to make money doing this.
So I was raised with a very healthy relationship with money, and I'm so grateful for my parents. But actually got married, and my husband and I have endured some horrible financial abuse from his parents, and it has created a lot of issues for us. And so for me, when we moved here in May of 2023, it was because we had completely had enough of the financial abuse. And we actually were in escrow on 40 acres in California. But we had zero say on anything.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's totally different than most people. But of course, I think everyone could probably say that with their own stories. But for me, it was, I don't know anything else. I don't know how to do anything else. I went to college. My degree was animal science. I've been in the agriculture industry my entire life. And so I honestly this has to work because I don't know how to do anything else. And it worked. So I'm really grateful for that.
Great. So then how did business become, like, and profitability become such a big part of your journey? You mentioned that you started teaching at a local library. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so when we first moved, we started a mobile butchering business. And the reason why we started with that, which is something that I would recommend to anyone and everyone, and I don't know, we might talk about this in a minute, but if you stick to your strengths, you will never go wrong. And my husband and I are really good butchers. And so that's what we started with, because we knew that we could perform a really good service and provide a really good product. And we had all of the equipment since we did it for ourselves. And so we really just
Yeah.
looked at all of the resources and talents that we had, and we just ran with it. And as you could imagine, pretty much everywhere is really needing butchers. And
Yeah.
so we we got put to work. Like, I think we moved here May 25th, and our first appointment was June 12th, and then it just didn't stop after that. And it was really cool because everyone saw what we were doing, but it was really scary because everyone saw what we were doing. And this is where I grew up. So, like, everyone knew exactly who I was and what I was doing. And I actually had some friends that were outside of the industry that were doing online businesses. And I wasn't even really online at that point. I mean, obviously through Facebook and stuff, but I didn't have a following at all. And they were there to ask me, like, how do I set up an LLC? How do I handle taxes? How do I set up my business? Just the very basic things. And I did that, and it was so much fun. And then I saw them start to see success in their business, and that was so much fun. And while that was fun, I really want farmers, like, that's where my passion is. That's who I want to see making money in the world. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
why I chose the people that I chose. But that's kind of how it started. Someone just wanted to know how to set up an LLC.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, like say a bit more about like how that's evolved and what you're doing now with Profitable Pioneers.
Yeah, so I first started, like I said, just with the basics of business. Um, and then I was butchering chickens for a family, and I met my first client there, and they needed help with making what they were doing profitable. And at that time, I probably had 5 to 10 people that had purchased my online course, but I didn't know them. And, they're just, I was excited about it, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is so fun.
Mhm.
And then I met that family. We toured their farm. They are like the most amazing gardeners ever. And I knew that they had something that the world needed. And so then it went from just kind of, I had my online course was literally how to set up a farm business legitimately. That's what it was at the time. And when I met them and they asked for personalized one on one help and they were local, I took them on, and not even officially for several months. It was just kind of an official friendship. But I had fallen so much in love with that aspect of it. At that time, I was helping them build websites, and I was like in every aspect of the business. And then as I grew, I had to step back a little bit. So now I do one on one coaching with farms, and my goal is to help them make $10,000 in the first 90 days. And we are actually going to be moving our farm onto 680 acres and taking it big time. And so I won't be able to do that for much longer. And I'm excited about that, but at the same time, kind of sad. But I also want everyone to know that, like, that's just the natural progression. Once you start and you keep going, you don't even have to worry about where it goes. You just follow the way that it's supposed to go, and it's really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, that new ranch that you're moving on to, that's like fairly recent. I just saw that come out in your newsletter, I think today, wasn't it?
I'm sorry. My thing turned off.
Oh, no worries.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I got
Is
you.
that
What was that
um
question?
I was asking that, and that new move, like that's fairly recent. I just saw that in your newsletter. I think it was in the last few days here. So
Yeah.
so what spawned that? Why the move again?
The move again, this is my parents' property right now.
Okay.
And we don't know what we're kind of nomads right now. We're farming the land that I grew up on, which I love, but I don't even know. Like, I couldn't even tell you how this happened. It's one of those things, that just like one person meets another person and then all of a sudden it lands in your lap. And we've
Yeah.
known about it for a little while, but my husband was there this morning and they said that they wanted to move forward. So what we will be managing that ranch
Wow.
for them. and making it profitable.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and like the thing that I've noticed, as I've been, going to conferences and doing things like that in the homesteading and egg spaces, there's actually a lot of stories like that where a young couple or a young family will get picked up by some kind of a large ranch or a conservancy project, and yeah, they get access to thousands of acres and basically free run of the thing. Like, this is actually a pretty common thing, which I think speaks to just how rare the skill set of being a profitable farmer is in today's world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into some of the I'd like to go through your ideas of like the best, worst, easiest, hardest, and then like most unique homestead businesses that you've come across. So let's start out with the worst ones. What are some of the worst homestead businesses that you think like almost no one should get into?
That's a good question. I think the two things that just make me, whenever someone brings up the idea, one is eggs, which, I mean, I know that it can be profitable, but like we're talking, you got to invest for that to be profitable. You're not going to make very much money off of your 6 hens that are in the chicken coop. And so when it comes to picking things of where to start and you have 6 hens, I definitely recommend not starting there. I think that's not a pet peeve by any means because they're thinking, right? So I'm excited about that. But the other one that, I get so often and it just blows my mind is I want to sell like homesteading t-shirts. And I just like, I didn't know that so many people would want to do that, but it's not very profitable and I definitely don't recommend that. So that's, if you bring up those two ideas with me, I'm probably going to steer you in another direction.
Okay, great. And yeah, what are some of the best ones or the most reliable, especially for folks who are starting out?
The most reliable ideas?
Yeah, or the best, most reliable ideas for folks who are just starting out.
So that's going to depend on the person, but I will say that every single person has a reliable idea. And how I help them find that is by doing a resource allocation. So going out into your property and just sitting and looking at your stuff and your land, because everyone has something. Everyone has something that they use all the time that they don't even realize that it's a skill. Or the space of their land, what they could grow on it that would be really awesome, or even an agritourism, experience. And it's going to be different for everyone, but anything that you are super good at and that you have the resource for, so you don't have to put any more money into investing. And then also something that will give you really high profit margins. And I know that that's not anything specific, but for example, I had a client that came to me. They were in a really bad financial situation and they just needed to make money. And turns out he's amazing with a chainsaw. And when we kind of looked at numbers and what you could make with a chainsaw in one day, you can make $1,800 a day with a chainsaw. And so there's so many different things that you can do. And everyone has that. The hard part is convincing you that you have something that is high skill. Because this guy, I mean, he's like, yeah, I can cut wood, no problem. He's really skilled with a chainsaw, but he just didn't think of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I don't know what it's like in the US, but because we don't have the LLC structure up here. And so I actually often recommend that my clients stay just sole proprietors and just do everything through their personal name. And part of the reason for that is because you can have a totally unrelated job where you're making money, like say cutting with the chainsaw, and you can run all the profit from one business into your farm business while you're developing up your infrastructure, so that it basically reduces your tax burden. Like here in Canada, if you're making decent money, it's like 50% tax. I think it's probably the same in most of the states now too. Is that something that is open to folks in the US?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Before people are really sure of what they want to do and they really just want a foundation, that's my recommendation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say are some of the kind of easiest and then like the hardest enterprises to get into for most folks?
Most people want to get into beef, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Um, Especially, I mean, these are kind of hard because it depends on the location.
Yeah.
I have a client in Dubai, and it's like,
Oh, wow.
I don't even know how to help you besides giving you ideas, right?
Yeah.
And then I have clients that are stuck right in the middle of beef country. And so getting into beef maybe necessarily isn't as hard because they have a lot more options. But in terms of turning around and selling it without an audience, without doing some of the foundational work is a challenge.
Mhm.
Anything that has a big price tag on it to start um, can be super overwhelming. I feel like that's something that just crushes people. And I think that going back to why profitability isn't tied to homesteads or to farms is because that's what everyone does, right? You have to invest millions to get started, and then you'll never make that money back until
Yeah.
you die, right? And I do things so unconventionally that we don't even look at your farm. If you have a fitness, like really, you're really into fitness, like that's where we start. And then you can apply
Yeah.
those same business skills into homesteading. And most people
Yeah.
don't even think of doing that, or for some reason, because the money is not coming direct, like you're still able to stay at home and homestead, but because it's not coming from the land, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So anything with a big price tag in terms of investing, or something that just takes a long time, like butchering, we did that a little bit in California. In fact, the laws were a little bit easier for us in California than they were in Colorado to get started, which was really surprising. We weren't expecting that. And we had all the equipment, and it was still very difficult to get started in Colorado.
Hmm.
And so sometimes the laws can make it very difficult to start. And if we didn't have all of the equipment, that wouldn't have been that would have been a huge challenge. So there's so many things that make it hard, and that's why most people just want to quit. But I'm really good at being creative. That's the fun part to me, is seeing the challenge and figuring out that's okay, we'll work around it, finding the loopholes, that kind of thing. Um, that was kind of a long answer. I don't even know if that answered your question, but
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And it's yeah, I love that you're laying out the kind of key principles for people to think about, as well as some examples. Um, so now just getting into a bit more examples, what are some of the most youth that have achieved that $10,000 in 90 days goal?
yeah, so we work backwards. One of my favorite principles for anyone to learn is that rich people need to eat too, and rich people need homestead services too. In fact, I think that these people need it more than others, because they're the ones that care what's in their food. They're the ones that are paying attention to what's in their food. They're
Yeah.
the ones that they don't make enough money to just spend endlessly, but they make too much money for some of the assistance.
Mhm.
And so if you just you could be doing everything right and still not make money. And then if you just tweak who you're selling to, all of a sudden, all of those problems go away. So for example, our rabbits are
Yeah.
one of our highest income producing sources on our farm. And I sell pet lion head rabbits. They are
Interesting.
bougie little things. I would never, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I would never pay as much for what I sell my rabbits for. I'm going to be honest. They're so cute and adorable, but if my child was like, I want that, I would be like, no. Um, and I sell out every single litter, and I sell them anywhere from $150 to $350. And you
Wow.
do $350 with 8 rabbits in a litter, it pays very well. And
Yeah.
the whole reason why I got to do that was because I just targeted a specific community that is very well known for how much they love pets. And they are all making at least $500,000 a year. So
Yeah.
you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to pick and choose who you want to buy your product. And what this allows me to do is this allows me to help people get product into their hands for very affordable or even free sometimes,
Mhm.
because our bills are being paid and because we have extra. And
Yeah.
so instead of nickeling and diming and constantly lowering our prices to help the people that we truly want to help, just by adjusting who
Yeah.
we're talking to, we're able to make way more than what our needs are. And then we're able to serve the community that we really truly have a heart for. And so that honestly, to get
Yeah.
people to $10,000, in fact, that was something I wrote down that I wanted to say tonight, was that I truly believe in my heart of hearts that every single homesteader has everything they need right now to make $10,000 a month. Everything they need. Maybe not mindset, maybe not the mindset, but in terms of resources and skill or products, absolutely. You all have $10,000 months available to you at your fingertips. You just have to learn how.
Yeah, that's such a great way of looking at it. And it's like everyone knows that feeling of, reaching into a coat that they wore last winter and finding like a $20 bill that was in the pocket, and just like how exciting that is. And it's like, imagine reaching in and finding a $10,000 check. Like that's powerful
Yeah,
stuff. And I agree with you 100%. There are so many opportunities that you just don't see until you get the mindset right. So that's
yeah,
brilliant. And I also want to say that it's funny, like when you mentioned the butchering business that you guys started as kind of your main enterprise. That's something that is a weak link everywhere. Like I don't know any place in North America of anyone that I've consulted with where one of their biggest struggles with running a profitable farm is finding a good butcher. Like that, half the battle is growing the good thing, and then the other half is like, how do I find someone who does a good job that I can trust, that won't wreck all my product. And so I never thought of like, yeah, that could be a great opportunity for people to get into. And it's something that, I grew up butchering a little bit of stuff ourselves on our farm. It was illegal for us to harvest our own animals on farm. We got caught doing it. They tried to shut us down, and so I kind of had to go underground and do it myself for a year. And I was able to make like $50 an hour, like watching YouTube videos of how to butcher pigs and like pressing like play and pause as I'm going through it. Even at like there's so much profit margin in butchering, and it's actually quite enjoyable. And it doesn't, depending on what species you're doing, it doesn't have to be super a lot of overhead. But yeah, that could be a really great opportunity for folks to get into something like that. Um,
absolutely.
so
And
good.
even if you don't have the resources to do it like full on butchering, how my husband and I started was just doing workshops, having people come learn how to do it
Yeah.
just for their own little homestead. And that's really where we got started,
Yeah.
was doing those little workshops. And then when we moved here and we were so busy with the butchering, but we didn't really have time or resources to diversify, that was another thing we did, was we would ask someone to borrow their animal and they wouldn't have to pay the processing fee. And then we could sell it for $1,500 a ticket for people to come learn how to do this workshop.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be all or nothing either.
Yeah. Another one that's coming to mind for the butchering thing, some of my clients here in Alberta, they decided to buy their own, poultry processing equipment just for themselves. And then they just put it up on like Kijiji, which is like our local Craigslist here. And just to see what they could get for it. And like, I think the first 2 people that rented it out paid for the cost of the equipment, and it was rented for like the entire summer.
Yes.
And so like little things like that, or there's actually 2 people now in our area who've started mobile poultry processing companies where they'll come out to your site and do it on site. And they're charging like $6.50, $7 a bird. And they can do like 300 birds a day with, 2 to 3 people. And you have to book 3 months ahead. Like when you order your chicks, you have to book in with these guys. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know folks love these. I know folks love these success stories. What are some other like unique success stories that you've come across with clients where particularly folks who like started in the city, thought they didn't have any experience, or that they'd never get into farming. And then after doing some brainstorming with you, they came across one of these, just hidden gems in their own skill set that allowed them to make 10 grand in 90 days.
Yeah. So, one of my favorite things ever is when I get on a first call and these people just like have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
And what's so fun is we are very talented people, not we as in me, we as in homesteaders. Like, holy cow, I am blown away every single time I sit down to talk to someone, because we're very skilled people with the things that we know how to do. And so what's so fun to me is like, I never even thought of that, and just watching the light bulbs go off. And one of them is a current client who saw this, and I actually know someone personally that also does it. So I was able to help, but it wasn't my idea. And he doesn't know this, but he's actually helped a ton of my clients. So basically what happens is, this is a good thing to do when you're kind of in between with an animal. So if you want to really get into pork, you can kind of do this before you just like buy a bunch of pigs, or beef or lamb or goat, anything. And what you do is, I'll use beef as an example. You can have a calf and you can get however many you want, but then you pre-sell them. And you pre-sell them you're going to want it to be above market. And basically what the contract is with the person who purchases is you're giving people in the city an opportunity to become a farmer. And so they have invested in this cow that is going to grow out, and they're going to have fresh beef in their freezer, and they will have something to do with it the entire step of the way. So they'll be able to come out and check in on the animal and to see how it's doing. And then they also will have a say in how it's raised and what it's being fed, because it's their animal at that point. And so there's so many different ways that you can cut the pie. You can have them pay a down payment, and then you can, have them pay like rental fee for the land for over the next time until the animal's processed. Or you can pick an amount that's a little bit above market so that, the rental agreement is in there, and they have the opportunity to come. So what is happening is these people are buying an experience to become a farmer, and they also get really high quality meat, which is what they want in the first place. And for you as the person that is doing this, all your expenses are paid immediately. They pay before you even have expenses. And I know someone personally that does this and does it with all different kinds of animals. And the way that he markets it is basically, raise it how you want it. You want it organic, you want it whatever. And that may not be super feasible depending on your land setup. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But I feel like that has been one of the most, not just creative, but life-changing opportunities that my clients have discovered, because that allows them to have the animal paid for up front. And then in the contract, we even talked about like what happens if the animal dies. And in the contract of the gentleman that I knew personally, um, he wrote it as like, you are now a farmer. Like, I am giving you permission to be a farmer, and farmers experience loss, and it just is really sucks. So there's so many different things that you can do to protect yourself by doing that. Contract writing is probably one of the skills that I recommend anyone in business learn the most, because it can really save your tush. But yeah, that I think has been the most creative one. Someone that purchased my product, Farm Like It's 2024, she made $8,000 in, I think it was 2 weeks, just by changing the way that she marketed her beef, and just got creative with the way that you talk about it. And again, it all goes back to, if you're talking to the right people, the people that have money, that care about it, who wouldn't want to raise their own cow? And then someone comes over to eat beef and you're like, I raised this myself, and you're in an apartment building, right?
Wow.
It's just
Yeah, yeah.
really fun and creative. I think that that's been one of my favorite things, is finding those really creative things that either no one has heard of, or it's just not done very often.
Yeah. That's such a great point, because like for me, and you mentioned at the beginning, in your intro, of just how there's this common idea of like, you better love this because there's no money in it. And it's like, so well, then why do people do it? Well, it's because they love it. And one of the things they love the most is sitting down at the table where they can say everything on this table like came from our farm, right? Or there's a whole story to it. And growing up, that was like one of pretty much all of my most memorable moments are around like the family dinner table at the different times of year, when whatever, right after chicken harvesting or the first corn of the year. Like, they're just such beautiful, powerful memories. And I never thought of like, yeah, you could help someone to have that same experience. And what's that worth, to have to be a part of those memories?
Yeah.
That's such a great idea. Wow. So can you walk through a bit of your strategy of how you help someone come up with a plan for like their living in the city, and they want to transition to making full-time living off the land? What's your kind of generic approach for helping someone to that? Is it cold turkey, slow transition? Is it a 1 to 5 years? What do you like to recommend?
So before I answer that, I want to kind of go into what that looked like for us.
Okay.
Going from, my husband worked, 9 to 5, and then all of a sudden just cold turkey.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the only way we could have ever made it work, because we had $100 in our bank account. We had $2,000 coming from his last paycheck, and then nothing. And so it was like, this has to work. This is our goal. This has to work. However, the reason why I mention that is because I feel like it is so based on personality. And I notice different personalities with different clients. And some people have money in their
Mhm.
bank as motivation. So I've noticed some clients, like, they were kind of struggling a little bit, not really on track. And then her husband got a raise, and all of a sudden they were like, it was motivating for them. And then I have had
Mm.
some clients where, oh, my husband got a raise, so we're good. And it kind of took the motivation out, because they didn't have to do it anymore. And that was me. We lived on 5 acres in California, and I look back on everything that we did, and I was doing everything right. I just didn't I just didn't have it all together, and I wanted it to be a full-time income, but my husband was making money, so it was just kind of one of those things. And so for me, the only way it would have worked is if we did it cold turkey. So the strategy changes based on my client. And I'm push. I use a lot of tough love in my coaching. And so if I notice that, oh, I want to get a second job because our bills are a little tight. No, you have everything that you need right now. You can make more than what that part-time job will ever offer you. And so that strategy is totally based off of the personality of the client. Sometimes, I had a client that again was kind of freaking out a little bit and wanted to get a part-time job, and it was good for her. And then she started doing a little bit better in her business. And then the others is just like, it's so hard to give a straight answer with that because everyone is so different. I will say that this is a pretty blanket statement that some people might not like, but I've seen it. The people that they have the option to pay a bill and they have an option to invest in their business or a business expense, and they lean in and they pay that business expense and their bill doesn't get paid, I know they're making $10,000 in that first 3 months. It's just a different animal. They are ready. They are leaning in. They are jumping when it is scary as heck, because it's scary for everyone, right? Like, no one has it easy. No one has the perfect setup. Like, everyone has something. And I don't know what it is, but every single time I sign a new client, their life goes to hell every single time. Windshields break, cars break down, their dryer goes out. Like, it's just a part of it. And when we first moved here, my husband's tire, we had our window break in our RV. We still live in our fifth wheel. An awning broke off. It was $1,200 awning broke off. Like, all of these things happen because the system and the way that life was designed just isn't designed for us to be out of the system, right? And the people that just lean into that and they figure out a way, those are the people that usually go cold turkey. And those are the people I see hit $10,000 way faster than the ones that, oh, we can't do this now because this happened. I'm not judging them by any means, because it's scary and it's hard. And we gotta take care of our families. We gotta make sure that bills are getting paid. But there is that fine line. And I think it's more of a hunger that I see in people. They're hungry, they want it, and they usually go with the cold turkey method.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And even for myself, like I was born and raised in a farm, and I had been doing it full time for 12 years until a previous job I was working at. I was farming full time. I got a really great consulting opportunity, took that, and then it blew up in a spectacular way. And I had basically 30 days to buy another property because I couldn't move back to the farm because I actually had a farmhand living in the house that I was living in. So it was like I literally didn't have a place to live, and I had 30 days to buy a farm, find a way to pay for it. And as a result of that pressure, I found the most profitable business on our farm that literally doubled all of the other enterprises that we run. This one beats them probably twofold. And it was literally just, I've been sitting on it and it was right under my nose and I hadn't seen it before. So yeah, sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. However, I will say that the caveat of that, and you're so right, there's like a personality piece. I've had some clients who come in with a lot of money and it's not a necessity, and they're in a really good financial position, but they don't have skills and they just piss it away in the first year. And then they get into that hard squeeze, but they've already burnt out their energy. They have no more reserve to go off of. And then it gets really tough. So it is that fine line of kind of knowing your personality and how it's going to work out. That's so true. So on that note, what's your approach to debt?
This is fun. This is a fun topic. I Again, this is a personality thing for sure.
Yeah.
But I will say that debt is so demonized when it can be such a really, really resourceful tool. And in fact, it's funny you say that because we had to buy our way out of the financial abuse. And
Mm.
so after paying things that we should have never had to pay for, um, we were in $100,000 of debt when we first moved.
Wow.
And
Wow.
if to anyone, like, that wrecked our credit, like,
Yeah.
our credit is still horrible from that experience. And to any outsider looking in, they would say that that was probably the worst financial mistake that we had ever made. But now we make on our slow months 5 times what my husband used to make. And so,
Yeah.
like, I'll take that over good credit any day, right? Like, that was a hard lesson. And again, that is very extreme.
Yeah.
Most people don't have that extreme of a choice. Um, and so in our case, the debt was a huge resource and a huge tool to get us where we needed to go. And there's so many ways to do it responsibly. There's so many ways to do it in a way that will just really level you up. And kind of the same topic, but a little bit different. I am totally anti budget in the traditional sense of the word because it just restricts our money. We're just restrictive and nothing grows,
Mm.
and money loves to grow. And so when we budget,
Mm.
same kind of concept with credit. Um, we budget in a way to where we are kind of opening and spending in the right places. And so our money is growing and circulating. So I think that utilizing debt, whether that is through, loans, like small business loans or credit cards or literally whatever you can get your hands on, even, from parents or friends that believe in you, it can be used as a beautiful stepping stone to get you where you need to go. However, there's always a caveat to that. There's always something that could come and bite you in the butt. But I am very pro debt when looking at all of the resources. I just look at it as another resource of how can this get me to the next step.
Yeah. Totally. And I would echo that as well. One of the probably most limiting beliefs that was impressed into me, outside of there's no money in farming is basically you had to cash flow everything. And it made it so hard to grow, and to move quickly when opportunities came up, because it's like, well, if you didn't have that much money, under the mattress, you just couldn't do it.
Right.
Versus, now having the option to go into debt when those opportunities arise. A couple of years for myself is because I finally broke free of that mindset of, um, yeah, it's not how much money you have under the mattress, it's how much rope someone's willing to give you. And as long as you know how to put that to productive use, it's just, like, money is energy.
Yes.
And if you know how to put that energy to productive use, yeah, it can transform almost anything. However, it can also, if you're putting it towards frivolous things like consumer goods or things like that, it's just really silly. The other thing that I found really useful about debt that I also didn't learn until the last few years is how useful it is for helping you to reduce your tax burden. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a really great year and you can't find enough, like, expenses because you're already burnt out, it's like, yeah, go into debt. Like, that's the time to double down on some of your, and then you're like, because if you can factor it out where the interest payments on the debt is going to be less than what you would have paid in taxes on that realized income, like, take that all day long. And
Yeah.
it just
No
starts to
brainer.
get really, yeah, really fun to play this business game and keep as much of the money out of the hands of government bureaucrats as possible.
Yes. Yes.
um, okay. What is or was your most dreaded and your most loved parts of your business?
My most dreaded parts are Facebook comments. um, Not just Facebook comments. I just recently became the president of our local ag expo, which I love and I'm so excited about because I went to our local ag expo as like ever since I can remember with my dad and I've just since COVID it's just been, not running well and so I've just wanted to bring it back to its original light and man, the older generation can be really
Yeah.
hard when you try to
Yeah.
do something new. And that is the worst. I think especially when it comes from people that I really respect.
Mm.
And that's been very, very hard for me. And of course, when you talk about something that's not popular, that's an everyday thing. You're going to be getting, doubt and all kinds of things. And I would be lying if I said it didn't affect me, like, terribly because there was
Mhm.
one night where I almost just deleted everything. It was like
Um,
I think what's hard too with my business is I don't need it. We live full-time off of our farm. And
yeah.
so many times it's like to my husband, "Why am I even doing this?" Like, it's
Yeah.
not even a necessity. But then I think about all of the farmers that do listen and have learned so much and now have a completely different financial life because of what I've taught, and that keeps me around. But that for sure is um, awful, the dreaded. And the fun part, I think, is doing things like I just get paid to do things I love every day. So not just with our farm business, which that's about to be even more different and so much fun, but in showing people every single day, like, this is how you do it, and this is what's so fun about it. And and then people seeing the results. I get messages every single day about my newish product I launched about a month ago, Farm Like It's 2024. I get messages every single day, and some of those stories just make me bawl because
Mm.
it's like you were saying earlier, the answer was right in front of your nose, you just didn't see it. And that's
Yeah.
the case for 90% of homesteaders that want to make a full-time income from their land. The answer is right under your feet. And and helping them find that and then helping them become creative, there's nothing like it. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Are there any parts of your business that you used to hate or dread, but now there's just been like something shifted and now it's like one of your most favorite things to do?
Hmm. Probably the coaching, honestly, because I remember when someone would, I would meet them on Zoom or Google and I would just pray so hard. Like, what if I don't know what I'm talking about? What if I can't help them? And I dreaded that so much because
Yeah.
I didn't have self-confidence when I first started and I was so terrified that I wouldn't be able to help them. And now it's my absolute favorite thing to do because I'm not even a part of the equation. I'm just honestly, I think 98% of my job is just being like a therapist and listening because when someone sits down and talks long enough, they find the answer on their own.
Yep.
And and it's so fun to watch that transformation
Yeah.
when they get on and they're like, like so worried about it. And then by the time we're done with the call, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so clear what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. We've got a couple questions from the YouTube live audience. This one's coming from Sabrina. She says, Cheyenne, have you had any success with clients who wanted to make money off their land, but without animals, or at least not in the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of like market gardening. I have several clients that do market gardens that are very successful. And you can be so creative with that as well. So, for example, in a market garden instead of the traditional. I love pre-selling, you guys. You can pre-sell anything. And so you can do something like that with a market garden. And they used to do this. I remember hearing about this from my dad when I was little. So this is an old thing that needs to come back. You could sell plots of your land before it's even planted, and anything that comes out of that plot will go to the person that purchases. So there's things that you can do with market gardening. There's things that you can do with leasing land that you have. There's things that you can do in agritourism. You guys, agritourism is the number one ag industry right now. Like, the number one enterprise in the ag industry is agritourism. People are we're just being drawn back to farms. And the first step, what do they do when they first want to start learning this? They want to go to the farm. So heck yeah, there's a million different things that you can do on your property if you don't have any animals.
Yeah, that's great. And on that vein of making money off of things other than animals and also pre-selling things, one of the things I did when I first came back to the farm is I created what I call the Food Forest CSA, which was based off the same idea of like a annual vegetable garden food for, or sorry, annual vegetable food garden where you pay a certain amount of money and then you get a weekly veggie box every week, for the rest of the summer. Usually it's 15 or 16 weeks. I built one, except it was over 4 years, where someone made an investment of, they were either $500 or $1,000 kind of shares, I called them. And that helped me to purchase all my everything from, strawberries and apples and pears and plums and cherries and all these different berries. Those same people came out and actually helped me plant it. And then every year for the next 4 years, they got like a percentage of the share back. So it was like, I think the first year was like 10% of the either a $500 or $1,000 share. So it's like, it helped me to spread out the expense side of things, or what it front loaded all of it, and then I had guaranteed sales to get me going for the first few years. And I made a bunch of mistakes. I would do a bunch of things differently. The biggest one being it would be done in gift cards, not in like emails of like, hey, what do you want this year for your $500 or whatever, for whatever it was. But it was like, at that time, like I had no real connections to my community. I literally just went around and started talking about it at like libraries and classrooms and stuff like that. It was super basic, and it sold out like immediately. It was so easy. So yeah, there's so many opportunities out there.
Yes.
We've got another question here. We've kind of talked about this, but I think it's great to hone in on this. Is what's one common mistake you see kind of city folks who have no experience make?
Since we kind of talked a little bit about that, one thing that I would say is the biggest mistake I see, the people that aren't where they are yet. So a lot of times that is city folks, is knowing that you can do this without owning any land. So my husband and I have never owned the land that we farmed. And we still won't for the next 5 years. And we've always leased, and it doesn't have to. I know that sometimes that can be like, oh gosh, I don't have the money to lease. So many times it can come in the form of work, or you can give them some beef out of the herd that you have, or some vegetables. We have some market gardens just north of us. We are helping with 12 acres out there, and the exchange is literally vegetables at the end of harvest season. And so there's so many things that you can do from the city when you are wanting to farm and you're wanting experience. If you have a little bit, you can always start leasing. If you don't have any, get just like what those agritourism experiences I was talking about, or even just getting to know people in your local community that are farmers. Many of us are so willing to help mentor because we need more farmers. Straight up, we have to have more farmers. And so I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that anyone that is in a place where they can't farm full time is to know that you can farm full time if you want to, because there are a million different ways to go about it. And leasing is so much easier than you think it is.
Yeah. It's so true. And I can't count the number of clients that I've had who don't have someone to take over their property, when they pass away. And they're like, do you know anybody who would want to, be part of this vision from the ground up, or thinking about that succession piece? And the other thing you mentioned, which I really want to highlight, is you said something about how, like, the mentorship from other kind of elder agrarians in the community, and how valuable that is. And like, it's the like, most our farming communities are dying. Like, most of the kids who were born and raised on farms left because it sucks so much. And so now most people who are left on the farm, they're in their, I think the average age in Canada is like 65. It's probably the same in the States. And so these are people who generally don't have someone to take over their farm. They have literally a lifetime worth of wisdom saved up, and they're just so generous with their time and their knowledge. And just, yeah, the amount of mentorship that I got when I was starting out for free, it's like, if I had to pay those consultants, it would have been, tens of thousands of dollars. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for, or create some kind of an exchange, because generally there's this weird dance of, like, the young agrarians don't want to ask for support because they don't want to take their time, and then the other agrarians don't want to charge for it and it's just this weird dance. It's like, find a way to exchange something that makes sense for both of you, and create that bridge. Because if we lose those elder agrarians without them sharing that knowledge, it's such a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So with that, I think that's a great segue into one of the last questions I have for you, which is, can you tell me a bit about some of your successes and struggles that you've had with succession plans? I know you mentioned you've never owned any of the land that you've ever been on, and then also talk a bit about some of if there's any strategies that you have right now that you're already thinking about for your children's succession, for when they take over from you, that you've learned as a result of going through some of the struggles of trying to take over land from your family.
Yeah. So with my family, things are pretty good. It's just a timing thing. And we will always be welcome to farm this land. So whether we own it or not, that's something that I've been so grateful for. And my siblings and I all work so well together. And I know that that's extremely rare in the world as well. And without going into too much detail, it was not that way with my husband's family. And even though they were completely in control of our finances, we just were never good enough, and we couldn't get on our feet financially, and everything that we did just wouldn't work. And so eventually we were planning to move onto this 40 acres together, and we were going head straight into chicken farming. That has always been our biggest dream, is to have a huge chicken farm. Maybe we would do some lamb in there, maybe a few cows, and build a really nice processing facility. So we invested in 5 Mary's Farms course to learn how to run your own farm, and all of these things. And it was just very apparent that no matter how much I knew, no matter how much I proved, no matter how much I did, I wouldn't ever actually be able to make the decisions. And the reason why I share that is because I think everyone can be like, well, they have their parents, like, and I can't lie, right? Like, what would we have done if my parents didn't have this farm that we could come back and live on? Like, 100%. I totally see how blessed we are from that. But everyone has their story, right? Everyone has something that's hard, and everyone has something that is not ideal. And I just really challenge everyone to really look at it and reframe whatever situation you're in, to find a way to where it doesn't have to work within the way that you feel like it should work. And I say this out of like months of being angry and frustrated and mad about the situation that should have worked, right? So I'm a total hypocrite for challenging you to do that, because I've just barely learned how to do that myself. But yeah, so we are on my parents' property, and our hope after we run this ranch is that we can come back and buy this property. We've already been talking about that and planning that with my parents. And so at this point in time, we're just kind of having fun. We're kind of in this point of life where we've been through it the past 8 years with this topic specifically. And we have a lot of, our body just remembers trauma, and we have a lot of things that we just need to heal. And now that our finances are taken care of, we can have some fun. And so that's why when this opportunity presented itself, we were like, heck yes, we want to do that. And we have Profitable Pioneers, but then not just that, we're able to take our full-time income and then just like explode it, right? We're taking something done on 30 acres and we're pushing it to 680. So that's our family plan right now. But when this might sound crazy to a lot of you, but I just really want you to challenge yourselves and push yourselves to dream big, because if I would have told you guys my plans, or my husband and I's plans, a year ago, I would have died. Okay. So just really believe that it's possible for you. The only requirement is getting started. So our goal is to purchase 9 houses in the next 10 years. We have 4 children. We would love to have 8 kids. We'll see if that's what the good Lord has in mind for us. But the reason why we want to do that is because our children owe us nothing. Our children owe us nothing. We were the ones to decide to have them. And so because of that, we want to give them the best leg up in the world that we can. And so we want to purchase a property of all different shapes and sizes for each individual child. And we want to divide our highest paying properties by 8 and put them in Roth IRA accounts, and just really take care of our children's financial future. And then when they turn 25, we want to give them their property, whatever one. And so that's what we want to do for our children, to give them generational wealth. And I have to say, if I would have told you this plan, in fact, I told one of my sisters, and bless her heart, she was like, how are you going to afford that? And that's our first instinct, right? Is to doubt, like, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
And then you do it. And then you're making more money than you've ever seen in your life. And it all started because you were, brave enough to just start. And so when you're thinking about what you want to do, it has to be bigger than a money goal, right? Your goal cannot be to make $10,000 a month, because what's going to happen is you start making $10,000 a month, and then it's like, now what? Like, what does my life even have a meaning for? And then you can even say that until like $100,000. Let's say you want to make $100,000 a month. And then you're going to hit that if you work hard enough. And then you're going to be like, well, now what? And so my biggest advice to you when it comes to all of the generational stuff, that everyone has a story. If it's going really well, if you're just like, what is my family? This is horrible. If your belief in what you can do and your goals are outside of yourself, if you have goals for your community, if you have goals for your children, if you have goals for any mission that just, you would do it for free, right? that's when you will create generational wealth. That's when you will.
Yeah.
Because that will never be attained in this lifetime. Whatever that goal is for you, if you pick something that has enough meaning, it will never be attained in this life, and it will carry you to the most insane places where you and your husband are just looking at each other like, this time last year we were in $100,000 worth of debt, and life was just so bleak, and now we're about to manage cows on 1,000 acres. We're out of debt. We are making more money than we've ever seen. And I just want you guys to know that you can do that as well. You just have to start.
That's beautiful. I heard a great quote the other day that you may not have come from a wealthy family, but it doesn't mean that a wealthy family can't come from you.
Yes.
And I just, yeah, that's how we're going to change the world, is that. Wow. So my final question for you, Cheyenne, is if you could go back, 5-10 years, whenever it was when you were at your lowest, and when you were just starting to wake up to your life's purpose, what you wanted to do. You had a time machine. You could go back then, and you had 30 seconds to tell yourself something. What would you say to yourself before you got sucked back in?
I've thought about this question a lot. I think the biggest one would be to invest in my mindset.
Yeah.
I think that if you invest in your mindset, and I'll explain that in just a second, what that can mean. But if you do that, you can do anything. If you can believe that you can do it, you can do anything. And that's going to take so much more. Yes, you can do things like YouTube videos and all kinds of things, but if you hire a coach, and I wish 5 years ago, actually 2015, if I could go back to 2015 when I first started my very first business, I wish I would have hired a coach, because I have all the stuff to make a great entrepreneur, but it did me no good when my head was telling me that it wasn't good enough. And now I look back and it's like, holy cow, like, you are so talented at this. You are so good with money, but you just had this in your head. I physically had a person telling me how horrible I was with money. And so I think that if I could go back, I would not convince we always convince ourselves like, this is silly. This is a little business. I would invest in a coach that can help me see my true worth and what I can actually do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very powerful. A friend of mine once said the cheapest thing in the world you can buy is brains.
Yeah.
It's like someone else's brain. You can pay someone by the hour for their life experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah. Cheyenne, that was awesome. This was a ton of fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and do the live with us. There's actually one, my colleague Chris just had a comment when you were talking about buying 8 houses for your kids. He said she should buy 8 Bitcoins instead.
See about that. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, thank you so much. I wish you all the best on the next stage of your journey, and yeah, we should do this again in a year, and I'd love to hear your success story of how things come along.
Absolutely, that would be so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Okay, take care.
See ya.